All right, so before we dive into After Effects, in the written part of the lesson here, you will have the terminology that is very important in video editing and motion graphics. And I really invite you to go through the written segment here where you will learn about all the lingo that's pertaining to our work, okay? So you will have what a timeline is. You will get to know what a clip is, very important, what trimming and cutting of the clips involves, what a transition is, for example, and also keyframes, what the rendering refers to, the frame rates, the resolution, aspect ratio, and codecs. Yeah. So those are pretty important, and you will hear me talk a lot about those. So I really don't want to spend a lot of time going through these now in the video, but feel free to read more about them because they're really, really important to get to know and to understand before you dive in deeper into After Effects and using After Effects as a pro. So there are a couple of things that I just mentioned now, and I'm just going to go through them because they're really important and kind of like really quickly explain what they all stand for. Okay, so the timeline in video editing software, the timeline is a central workspace where editors arrange and manipulate video and audio clips and photos and whatever graphics you want to put inside of the timeline. It provides a visual representation of the chronological order of how you've arrange your elements, and then you can cut them, trim them, move them around, stack the clips one top of the other, and so on to create your final video. Clips are what we refer to as short segments of a video or audio footage, and we can work with these individual clips on the timeline, and we can source them from different video files and capture them live if we need to, and create clips out of a live capture. But the important thing to know is that in non-linear editing, which pertains to editing and in Premiere, for example, or in After Effects, is that NLE stands for non-linear editing. And what non-linear editing is that you can trim, split, and arrange your clips. And if you made an error, you can go back. You can undo or extend and so on. So it's a non-destructive way of working. That's the idea. A cut, a cut is a fundamental editing technique where one shot transitions abruptly to another shot. So basically you're showing something and then you're jumping to something else. Yeah, we call that a cut. Trimming involves adjusting the in and out point of a certain clip. So a clip has its own timing, and you're deciding what part of the clip you want in and what part of the clip you want out. In order to do that, we call that trimming. Transition, you will hear transition being mentioned a lot, and it's basically an effect that is very popular and can be done in multiple ways. So it's when you're cutting from one shot to another, you can dissolve, you can wipe, you can fade, you have millions of different ways to jump from one shot to the other to make it less obvious that you change your shot and that you transition to something else. So that's what we call a transition. And let's look at, for example, the keyframes. Keyframes are very important because they are markers in a timeline that are used to set and control changes in the clip's properties over time. So editors can create animations or gradual changes by just adjusting these keyframe values for properties like position, scale, opacity, and many more. So basically remember that you can add keyframes on pretty much any property of any layer in After Effects. Rendering, when you hear somebody saying rendering, it's the process of exporting your video and all the applied effects on it into a final file format. And this process takes the project that you have and creates that final video file that you can then share and distribute further. Frame rate is pretty important, and you hear that a lot, and refers to the amount of individual frames that are displayed per second in the video. So different type of frame rates create different smoothness in the visual perception of your video. The most common frame rate is 24 frames per second. We call it cinematic, or 30 frames per second, which is for TV. And 60 frames per second is the high frame rate that might be used sometimes to showcase a very smooth motion that you're trying to create. Resolution. Resolution refers to the number of pixels that you can see in each dimension that makes up the video image. So high resolutions such as 1080p or 4K are better off if you want to get more clarity and detail in your video. An important thing also is the aspect ratio. And it refers to the proportional relationship between the width and the height of the video frame. Commonly, we expect to get 16:9 most of the time, or if you're working social media, might be reversed, 9:16, for Reels on Instagram and so on. The aspect ratio chosen affects how the video will be displayed on different screens, so remember that. And finally, the codec. What is a codec? Well, it stands for compression, decompression. So compression, decompression, called codec. And what it is, it's an algorithm that's used to encode and decode video files. So different codecs compress video files to reduce them to a size that is more manageable and acceptable. So popular codecs that you will see will be for delivery, for example, H.264 or H.265, or codecs like ProRes developed by Apple. Each of those are suited for specific applications and platforms, and we'll see that later on. But I just wanted to go through these so that you get an idea about the terminology.